Hello, my name is Craig, and today we are going to talk about onions. Yes, actually, we're going to talk about onions. Okay, we're not specifically going to talk about onions, we're going to talk about the content onion, which is a concept that I've invented to try and explain something quite important to you. When we're making content, we shouldn't be thinking about making just one piece of content. We should be thinking about making some kind of repurpose machine. That's the ultimate goal. If we're just thinking in single pieces of content as we're making them, it makes it really difficult to make a lot of content. And ultimately, all the social networks want a lot of content, and the things that you produce can actually be remade and repurposed for multiple different platforms. And this is where the idea of a content onion comes from. The idea of a content onion is one big piece of content that you can repurpose into smaller pieces of content. And that's what we're going to get into in this episode. And by the way, I am going to flog the onion metaphor to its death by the end of this video. So be ready to hear lots of onion puns. This is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a repurpose machine. We're aiming to take the big onion at the very top, and the big onion is a video or a podcast or anything else, and we'll get into that in a little bit. We're aiming to take the big onion, the content onion, and we're aiming to turn it into smaller slices of onions. Not everybody likes onions. Not everybody likes big onions, especially. Some people prefer smaller pieces of onion. Some people can put up with small slices of onion. So if you are only making a content onion, if you're only making a massive video, if you're only making a really long podcast, if you're only making really long articles, if you're only writing books, you are missing out on the other pieces of ways that you can turn your big content onion into something that actually people will find really useful, even if they don't consume the content onion. So we're looking to take the content onion and turn it into layers of different pieces of content. I split this down into 4 layers of content. There's more layers than that, there's less layers than that sometimes. And in this video, I've got 2 examples of 2 content onions that I create on a weekly basis that will explain the concept to you a little bit further. So let's look at the biggest thing at the very top. Let's look at the meal. The content onion, the actual thing as a whole. That can be a long video, it might be a book, it might be a long form podcast, it might be a really long article or something like that. This is essentially the big thing. This is the thing that most people probably wouldn't consume in one sitting. There's lots of different kinds of content out there that fits into this kind of bracket, and it's mainly these kind of things. There's probably other things too. Other examples could be an album, an actual music album, a really long album. So the big thing at the end is basically the thing that we're trying to get people to consume, but they won't likely consume the whole thing in one sitting. And then we move down to side dishes. These are basically versions of the giant content onion. This could be short videos, single chapters of your book. It could be audio snippets from the entire podcast. It could be a short article made out of a larger article. And then we go down another layer into the content onion, and these are snacks. These might be short tutorials. These might be a single email based on a single chapter of your book. These might be a series of images based on something that you've made previously that's a bigger piece of content. And then we go right down to a single ingredient, and that is a tweet. That is an Instagram post. That is basically just a single status post on one platform. The reason I'm trying to get you to think like this is because it is really difficult to keep making loads of ideas that are original. I covered this in my last video, which I called Zoom In and Zoom Out, and that's where I discussed zooming in out of a concept or an idea and zooming back into a concept to basically make you have the ability to make an infinite amount of ideas. This is a similar kind of concept. If you're trying to think of the single tweet over and over and over, basically if you're starting with a tweet and trying to work it backwards up to a bigger piece of a content onion, it makes it really difficult to come up with lots of ideas. If you have a big content onion already, if you have a long form video, a long form podcast, a book, a series of articles, whatever it is, when you've got the bigger piece of content, you can repurpose that into smaller pieces of stuff very, very easily. Please don't make social content this way. Don't start with a tweet and try and work backwards. Don't start with a tweet with none of the stuff above it. Have something bigger that people can consume, because when they read a tweet, they'll want to probably buy something else from you. And if you don't have the bigger thing, all of the tweet ideas and all of the things that you're saying don't really link up back to the big concept. Don't have a single slice of an onion. Make sure you've got the big onion at the top too. So let's look at the first example of my content onion. My main content onion is a book that I wrote called Extreme Production. It's about daily habits, it's about consistency, it's about daily practice, it's about doing things daily, basically. How I get so much stuff done in the same 24 hours as everybody else. That is my main content onion. It's the thing that I talk about a lot on Twitter. It's the kind of things that I talk about on all kinds of platforms. So my big content onion is a book, a 147-page book, something that most people won't sit down and consume in one sitting. And then the next layer down is a single chapter. So I plucked this single chapter out of my book recently. The chapter is called The Best Ideas Require a Lot of Sweat and Tears. This chapter is about how to make ideas and how making ideas isn't often easy, and you've got to sit down and really think about them, and it can take days, sometimes weeks, to come up with a really good idea. That's what that chapter is about. I took that chapter and went another layer down and wrote an email. I write a daily email, and my daily email is called Extreme Production. And in that, I decided to focus on the idea of ideas generation. So I took that concept from the chapter, and then I zoomed in just a little bit further and peeled another layer back of my content onion and just wrote a really quick email. And then in that email, I saw a really good tweetable bit. So I peeled back another layer and wrote a tweet. Staring at a blank page, don't know what to do next, make the page less blank. So that's the way I structured my content onion, and I do this often. This is how my repurpose machine works on Twitter and on multiple other platforms. Sometimes it includes an Instagram image as well. In fact, this did include an Instagram image too. I made an image that said, no art before you start, and that was based on the same idea of making ideas. So the way that sits in my particular content onion is a book at the top, a single chapter, an email, and then a tweet. And another example of a repurpose machine, my other big thing that I do is it's called That's the Job. It is a weekly conversation with another designer that I know called Richard Baird, and we sit down and talk about design for around an hour. That is a Zoom call that we're doing at the minute, obviously because of lockdown. The long form video gets uploaded to YouTube as well as Instagram, and from that content onion we turn it into a podcast. The podcast is exactly the same length, but some people find podcasts easier to consume than videos, so we turn it into a podcast, an audio only podcast. And then from there we also upload snippets and little bits of it to Instagram, and we upload the long form video to IGTV, Instagram TV too. And further down another layer, we also upload snippets to Twitter, and we also take ideas from the video and from the audio and just turn them into tweets too. So that's how the content onion works for That's the Job. We have an hour-long video. We take the hour-long video and we turn it into a podcast. We take the podcast and turn it into short videos, or we turn the video into short videos. And then the ingredients are tweets and Instagram posts that sit on the end of that act as the tiny little slice of the onion. As you can probably see, making a content onion makes making all the rest of your content much easier to repurpose. If you don't already have a content onion, I suggest you go away and think about it. To recap on some of those ideas, if you want to make some kind of repurpose machine for social media, and by the way, I recommend you really, really do this, you need a content onion. You need a big thing at the top of your content that you can peel back the layers of and use it on different networks at different heights with different slices of it. And remember, not everybody likes a big onion. Not everybody likes to consume the entire content onion, but most people can at least stomach a slice of it, and that is the last onion metaphor for this video. I've been Craig Burgess. If you want to read more about me, go over to Twitter. I am at Craig Burgess, or go over to my website, and that's getdoingthings.com. Until then, I'll see you next time, and thank you for watching.